Thank you all the Sangha and Dashidele to everyone following us on the live stream.
We'll begin with the Yellow Prayer Book for opening prayers on page 1. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Om benzo sato samaya manapalaya benzo sato denoba didando me bava sudagayo me bava subochayo me bava narado me bava savasede me daya sawa karma same sudakya guru aha wo bangave sarvada dangada benzo mame ane tsohyosira Samaya Zato Om Benza Bema Vaya Number Daba One Jesus Saya Om Benza Rege Avon Se Jaren Goyok Yonsa Golve Visa Hong Reye Jarbore Rai Shalim Babo Lord Zambele Na Balanjo Song Dameni Shaldale Dalen Balo Maya Danga Nuptayo De Dalam Jondra Sanda Dameni Dameni Juda Rambo Jaya Rabo Pasan Jayen Dunjoya Ba Mame Baya Lodo Enkolo Rambo Je Norve Rambo Je Tsewang Rinpoche, Lempo Rinpoche, Longpo Rinpoche, Tamcho Rinpoche, Mapo Rinpoche, Techen Boye Pompo, Kipo Mai, Tewa Mai, Le Mai, Karma, Mito Mai, Dope Mai, Nasal Mai, Techa Mai, Nye Mai, Dawa, Rinpoche Do, Sole Namba Jarve Janzi, Wisala Dhamaya Pamjal Posong Sopa Mazawa Mipa Shinga Namba Dabandin, Kubye Shinga Yedanin Somi Padin Lama Damba Dunjele Dunsinemen, Kunchonga Denden Binyima Par Sampo Joke Shabdon, Amito Sitya Damba Samo Shavayon, Burvajewa, Toji Nove Dunda Yesuso, Yene Senje Labdozo. Saye Pecho Soye Medaita, Rera Lenye Nye De Jemboinde, Sanje Shen La Mede Purvaye, Dogai Nandai Shen De Yewai Ho. Page 7.
Mandala offering, page 7. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain, my body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Da Kini Ratna Mandala Bhakti Cha Soha. Namo. To the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence, I offer all appearance and existence, arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you. May the 3 realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord, with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind, primordially pure and unborn, as the unfathomable dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Tamba Chujin the Tang Chudo Nambara, Talamas under Song the Magi Chuba and Kazang, Say Chuba, Gorshure, Triti Nang Chuba, those Tatan the Song Chuba, Song Chuba, the same Gitini, get a good number of wrong, Telasoba. Equal at any something, something that not all wrong, gave it to Patanti. Then you know, you should give out there as an army to pass on Guyori, Trinitera, Tatan, telling down Jojo needs Joan, the Devil body. They are to be not the Devachimbo Shipa, Tini, 드리 저거 신지 탐지 강도 강나서 지종이 탐지에 아니니 답답시랍디 야변지 대화라 드리 놈적 대화들라 드리 내기요를 스바대화 마토는 스바대화리 또는 데레티는 있으면 되지 되는 정도요래 rakta marak cheparti kodato namjeto job yoga devati ngodan thong sona devati mishi tenjoro te ma thong ten khobe tawa te sabat dasba kholo de kholo devati chamure de telati dele gar tablati tan sama jodo ben chubaso.
So Dharma friends, yesterday, so we continue with sadhana on Guru Tsewang Dzinpa, and so yesterday we spoke about the offerings, and we finished with the outer offerings and the inner offerings, and today we come to the secret offerings, and so that is related to the mind, and so it's all of these virtues and non-virtues, thoughts arising in the mind, this coming and going of thoughts in the mind. It is the transformation of these thoughts, these afflictive emotions into primordial wisdom. That is the secret offering. There's also the union offering, and that is the union liberation offering, and that is the offering of bliss. So that is a state that all sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara, whether they have a body or no body, experience in an ordinary sense, a state of great bliss. So it is the union of two, of ultimately method and wisdom, or the yab and the yum. And we call it the samsaric, mundane bliss, in an ordinary context. So when ordinary people are in a state of sexual union. So that is from a perspective of not having realized the nature. It's the nature of bliss. If one realizes its nature, then it is from that realization that the non-dual primordial wisdom arises. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it therefore says it is just a difference between knowing and not knowing, being aware or unaware of it. So the actual essence, the nature of the bliss arising from union is the greatly blissful primordial wisdom. But if one does not see that, then that bliss itself is the very root of samsara. And it also is the origin of the wheel of existence, representing this samsaric kind of attachment to the samsaric states of bliss. So this offering is the skillful means, the method to liberate this.
인생 탐지 시작이 다니들이 니스메베 이시거나 템로요래 저는 초게 되어서 저는 콜로템 총 천여 되래 미베되와데 민 초데 우리 민요래 미바카래들 민바 다제들 내래 라리앙은 되니 다진이 탑신이라 부모님의 별 찍찍 나도 성들이 포모라차 모포라차 들이들이 대단 고와서 받는 정도의 뉴스진이 양사양이 되는 대령 고와서 대령 고와서를 유모바 족지 텔레집에 들이디 뉴모 족 대그 끝일 상에 들이직디서 발지요나 들다 신주상 신주롱도 나도 저 다른 조반 버지지서 신주시 받을 강리 다사다 파제 파파시지 탐지 거니 소고요 신주제 사지 그때 마시고 선지지 대시 조과 만만히 봐야 논초과 사만히 봐 창시과 때라서 직진 칸 빼지 야나 서리 난다면은 네 이걸 소발했지 돈다 가는 그냥 니걸 속아. 니걸 속아도 잡아. 하고서 니걸 속고 까베까 세트에서 속도 저기 기사한데 왜? 돈 가야 매번 잡을 가게지. 이 가르쳐 제요 거든요. 심리 따먹거든요. 세상다 타도 찍고 다랑 쪼고시네. 다 잡을 놈들이 맞도 뭐가 쏘지 레들이 다 돼서 다들 먹기 쫓은 거예요. 먹기 쫓이는 애들이 다들 신적 참아서 가르쳐야 요리들 너들로 먹거나 매발라 속하더니 제가만 거요. 너는 뒤신적에 강이 성전에 나디 말을 빠져서 나디 말을 빠졌더니 이번 독섬죠. 이번 독섬 들더니 양자 독마 들이 데리서 이제 또 이제 랑자한테 뒤잘래 저거들이 잠시도 그 차롱인데 들이 적디 강나 들이 속디 성님하고 차인 거요래. 자와카레리 다다 강사 랑게 주일에 요바가더니 세군대로 마도나 니모 보왕도 쇼를 되게 용악을 내서가 뒤식식 상황 데려서 뭐래. 터터지 터는데 말과를 맞아 찍혀요 말이지. 말과 내로 맞아 봐 뒤집어는데 요래.
Also before we have mentioned the liberation offering, and also we mentioned yesterday there it is related to the to chakra samvara and also the union offering. And chakra samvara literally means, so it is Demchok in Tibetan, which means supreme bliss. And so that is when all dualistic grasping has become completely purified, and the mind dissolves into that expanse of non-dual primordial wisdom. And in that state, one experiences great bliss. So that's why Chakra Samvaram is given that name, Demchok, which means great bliss or supreme bliss. And that is in contrast to the lower bliss, like the inferior kind of bliss, which is the samsaric bliss. So not supreme, but inferior. So we might come to that state of great bliss in the natural state, but then again, these thoughts of self and other arise. Actually, it is method and wisdom, the male and the female in their union, but not recognizing that, they then become attached to each other. So the female becomes attached to the male to the female, and then that union actually becomes the source of samsara. This is where samsara arises from such fixation. And so then from that perception, this dualistic perception, then the 6 afflictive emotions arise, and driven by these 6 afflictive emotions, we again and again take birth in samsaric existence. So then on the next page here, on page 10, so here it speaks about the liberating offering, and then these enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete. So these enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete, for example, that's also mentioned in the Yamantaka practice. And there are basically 10 different things that they do that make them be falling into that category. For example, it is those individuals, those beings who try to destroy the Buddha's teachings, and who cause a lot of harm towards sentient beings, and who harm the Vajra master and engage in the extremely negative actions with immediate retribution and so forth. But to just give one example in this world, who, for example, would be someone like that? And for example, it would be people like terrorists. How much suffering have they really brought and destruction have they brought to this world? And mainly it is because there is ignorance in their minds, and hatred and jealousy. And all of these afflictions arise only from that self, that me. And then with that, not recognizing, being ignorant, they go around killing and harming others. They practice all the 10 non-virtuous actions. So these are those enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete. And so mainly they arise out of self-grasping and ignorance. And then from that develop the 3 poisons, and then there are the 5 poisons, and then there are the 84,000 afflictive emotions. And so due to self-grasping, their minds is frozen like blocks of ice floating in the ocean. And they cause a lot of harm towards sentient beings, with the body or without a body. And so the root of all that is that these individuals have not realized the nature of the mind, and they are controlled by afflictive emotions, and driven by them, they accumulate karma with body and speech. And this is also the source of all sorcery or black magic and so forth. There's really no harm which is not included within ignorance. It all is because those beings have not realized the nature of the mind.
라 탐지 대화 진보 냠스 용신 탐지 해일까에 자시했다면서 서로 라 탐지 똑같이 그 사족성비 제답선을 때에 콜로딘 쪽을 답을 하던 상황 콜로딘 쪽을 함지 제대로 콜로딘 쪽에도 정말 초기 대화 초기 대화 시바 대탐절들이 매번 대화 용보 다진이 차와지 니디 되는 대화 진보시 감니 이 매바 찾았지 세고 내록들을 내고는 내록들 하고를 들이다리지 내록 많이 받다다 니디는지 또 탐지 식도를 들이면은 버식은 매자 받는지 식도 찾았더니 이제 되고 윤몽도 이시 체험 말이지 간디 식거들 다다 냠용진 탐지 때라 이야 다 조냐미지만 시락시 못지야 그래 시락시 못지야 그래 망가지들이 도대인이 제요래 홍친이 제행도리 시거래 들이 다시 쪽으로 성들이 콩 고tor 로바니 다 똑같다 그래 똑같다들이 콩 서로 실패 지들이 총사성들이 서오지 들이 따르지 다 바로 보세요 다 콩을 도시다 되지 당을 쳤대 나도 봐요 하 세세 대로를 나도 이치가 간다게 깝더니 내랑 그 세면 시당이 하고 그 이시도 소자들이 좀 소자 상하고 소자 이시대가 시당을 하고서 이시디 또그 니디 메발 나 라사 라면 이거요 하장 싸워 차대요 그랬더니 동사도 괜히 다 거기서 도시 탐나거든. 그 도시 잡아서 그 도파요. 네. 코하하 제시세. 됐다. 필도도 다로 바로 들고 바로 사지 마로 사지 되풀이 서로 서로 라로서지 딱 내주사들 세대 하하 시시. 내가 원래 민몽이 이식을 잘지 내가 잡고 요래. 들이다 민몽이 이식을 잘 주들이 대다다에 자르듯이 샤차를 받대. 내가 이제 중앙대라서 받을 무슨 소를 하는데 고소 감바 요래 마마이나나 소 감바 대답지 소 감바 탐지 담을 따네. 따져서 가시 소 감고나 대답 이제 띵하는데 라지니가 도고 돌들이 진짜 상황 탐지 소 감데 대한 고소를 피부쳐야 돼. 고소를 쏘는 진짜 상황이 유모바데 식성나 그래서 끼와디 랭이 박차던 남지 파타니 끼와서 먹고 샘데 샘데식이 뭐지 싸마전에 상속섭을 되는 그래서 상속섭을 살아 빨래 그러다가 라카 보탕지게 조던이야 되지 되나 파테도 나도 박차 탐지 염증 가라 꼭들이 라카 보탕지 좋아지는 이식이 제다면 되다 이메가 차로 니스도 그 탐지 니미가 여서 다르지 들이들 다르게 다 스설라 다스도 차다를 좀 목샤도 차시다로 봐대 내가 봐대들이 따뜻한 것도 초고사나 다스비 때도 마음이 받다지 도차시에 땅도 먹좀 랑지 차다로 봐다지 사요 대장도 뉴모 봐요 뭐시나 대장들이 생기를 내서 상속이 오래되는 그래서 이식을 하긴 몽사들 잘록들이 소속에다가 하고 그래 소속 이식을 잘 검담에 유모가 쓰는 살 쉬는 대마타들 유모 근데 세상에 하고 때 시기 시바데 다 이시들이 라 이시바데 이시바한테 소속들이 성지들이 내가 하고서는 남도 이제는 남도 이제 내 저기요 말이야 또 이제 직장이 좋고 무슨 있으면 직디서 그송을 갑자기 시바사오데 왕지었었네. 다시 유모바데 매바라 그래. 다 잘송지. 이시가 유모바 싸송지. 설리다 되들 고소 마음과 랭이 박차 준제버서도 그리 샤타를 받아들 적디나 라던 수마 주종 수마 탐지게 대서 이제 일 총콜을 전전에 들고 총콜 보고 쏠나답고요. 체제시당 후보 때는 지나서 주발에 다들 조반벌들이 다다들 디 조칸 풍부 감찜지 담지 이런 신지들이 원래 다들 다르지 풍부하지 선절함들이 되지나 우리 다이게 유몽가데 파상의 시가 톱을 때다 전투지 다 싸움 주발 때도 하장 동사만 보여래 내가다 자와탕제 때래 너나 뉴모바 이식을 자그요래 오늘 때는 뉴모바 망보래 말이 뉴모바 말을 받지 버래 뉴모바 예체였다 말을 받지 버는데 그요래 이시 자와탕제 싫어도 랑 사자치 보고 감시는 이시들이 소속을 유몽 이실 저투거지 유몽거랑 이 시장은 동안도 저거 잡소이 인성까지 배송을 다까더니 동해 잠시 대화를 저투고요래 다 동해 매번 대화 첨보지 또 그래 디셈대식 뭐 이시들에 계시요 말이 다고 지어 말 말이 쉬어요 말이 그러니까 내수 자와 같은 대송한테 소리 단지 조투될 때다 진짜로 단도도 자주만 버지지 이따다 자기도 제대로 지요만 담제도 뭐 좋아데 미나 도스인데 들이 뭐 독성경고 들다 샤다르선 이 주방을 다다주다 같이 뭐 대신에 상하고 자주 상하고 주방 라미 라면 주방 참아더니 동띠는 도도나 상하 초가 담에 때리 람신이 마셔왔다 하고 그래.
So these 10 these enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete. So we have said there are those who cause a lot of harm to the Buddha's teachings and sentient beings. So there are those who have a lot of hatred and aversion against the Buddha's teachings and other sentient beings. And how does this arise? It is due to the wind energies and the afflictions stirring in the mind. Actually, Milarepa had said, ultimately, no gods and demons exist. And then, since that is the case, then why is it that there are so many gods and demons that we now perceive? Actually, a disciple asked that in the context of the Vajrayana practice. And so, all beings possess Buddha nature. So from the ultimate perspective, because they all possess Buddha nature, there are no real gods and demons, and there also is no real samsara and nirvana. But sentient beings have not realized that, so for them there is the perception of self and other. And then naturally they will be attached to happiness and they will have an aversion against suffering. And due to that attachment and aversion, they develop mainly, so those particular individuals mainly develop those thoughts of hatred and jealousy. And when the mind is controlled by that, then just naturally, whoever they encounter, they will have a natural resentment against others. For example, there are some terrorists who go into a children's school and full of hatred and kill all of these children for no actual reason. There is nothing, there's no real reason behind it. They are just very ignorant. And so these are those individuals that we here bring to mind. And so how does it all actually start? It starts when one takes birth and is in the womb of one's mother. It starts with the forming of the flesh, blood, and bones, which are related to the three afflictive emotions. So it is said that from the white drop of one's father, one bones grow, and from the red drop of one's mother, the flesh, and then the blood is also related to the mother, but also it is ignorance. And so this is how the three poisons kind of make the flesh, blood, and bones form, and samsara arises. And so then these individuals, then based on this is the basis, and then they develop these afflictive emotions, increase them, so these habitual imprints become extremely thick. And then various temporary circumstances lead beings to commit really atrocious crimes. And the cause is said to be our karmas and obscurations, our negative karmas and obscurations, and the conditions are the evil spirits, the obstructors, and all the harm doers and so forth. So temporarily a condition arises, but first the being is controlled by the afflictive emotion. And this is how they already have taken birth. And even though they have taken birth in the human world, they develop thoughts of hatred. And that is really what is in direct contradiction. That is what opposes the mind of bodhicitta. And likewise, conversely, bodhicitta opposes hatred. So it is said in the 37 practices, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. So the Buddha's love is what directly opposes hatred. So one thought destroys the other thought. They cannot exist simultaneously. It's just like two people cannot sit on the same one in the same chair. So when somebody's mind is very ignorant and controlled by very powerful afflictive emotions, then it is impossible for love, for bodhicitta, to remain within the mind. There is no place for it. And also it is the other way around. So for example, it doesn't matter what being one is. There are human beings like that and non-human beings and animals. For example, scorpions and poisonous snake. These are all natural manifestations of hatred and jealousy. And among human beings, for example, somebody whose hatred and jealousy is very powerful will cause a lot of discord, perhaps between the guru and disciples, and just naturally whatever they do becomes an activity of the 10 non-virtuous actions. And all of that has its root in ignorance and not recognizing the nature of the mind. So there is attachment, there is aversion. There's attachment to oneself and aversion against other. And due to that, as being at the basis, one perceives then everything else, everything other, as a threat or like an enemy. And then we engage in various actions. And then those people go around and cause a lot of destruction in the world. So then what can we do about it to eliminate this harm? It is of no use to just kill a person, because the real root of the problem are the afflictive emotions, is the hatred, is the jealousy, is the 3 poisons. And actually, even we as the practitioners, if we look at our own mind, we actually have the exact same afflictive emotions. We just have them to different extents. Some have them more, some less. But it's the same afflictive emotions and thoughts that also need to become liberated. And so this one is also related to the liberation offering. That is a wrathful offering or deliverance. So, and also it's related to the union offering. So during the union, for example, all coarse and subtle thoughts cease, because one comes to a state of great bliss. And through the power of great bliss, all other thinking is brought to an end. And so there's this mantra, Bodhicitta Mahasukham, which is Bodhicitta, and Mahasukham is great bliss. So when great bliss arises, there is no thought in the mind, and you just rest in the natural state of the mind. For example, when you practice Chakra-samvara, you have said Chakra-samvara, Demchok, means supreme bliss. And actually, Chakra-samvara, even though we speak of him as a deity, it's actually the nature of all the deities. It is said that all the deities experience the Herukas great bliss, and their minds and the pure forms, the pure forms of those deities are sealed by the greatly blissful Dharmakaya. So that is the nature of Chakra Samvara. So Chakra Samvara is not just this one solid thing, this one deity, but he actually represents the great bliss of all the deities, and thus his name, Demchok, or supreme bliss, which is in contrast to the inferior bliss, which arises out of an afflicted mind of self-grasping and dualistic grasping. So it is, however, through desire and the bliss that is generated through desire that one does come to a state of great bliss, and one can there recognize non-duality. One comes actually to a state of non-duality. One comes to the natural state of the mind when it arises, and if one recognizes that, then in that moment, all dualistic thoughts will disintegrate, just like wood being burned away by fire. And then there is no more distinction between afflictions and primordial wisdom and so on. It all becomes one. So one who has some experience with practice will recognize that. For example, when strong anger arises in you, then you would recognize that. For example, there is this story from Tibet during the Cultural Revolution in the turmoil. So there was this person, and he was someone who has recognized the view, and so they were kind of starting like a battle, and he raised his weapon, his rock as a weapon, and then the other person also raised his rock as a weapon, and then the realized one, the yogi, then he just threw away his rock and he started laughing, and then he sat down and just meditated. And so then what that represents, and then the other person actually, their anger also disappeared. And so when one is in a state of practice, then one recognizes there is anger instantly. One immediately sees that. And that awareness, this wisdom, is actually the true weapon. It's the secret weapon. And if awareness recognizes the anger arising, then through the power of awareness, one recognizes non-duality, non-dual awareness. And then one sees no more difference between someone who is getting angry and someone who one is getting angry at or fighting against. And then the mind becomes very clear. And so that is what occurred in his mind. And so he just raised the rock and then kind of in a threatening pose. And then he threw it away and he started laughing. And so this is really how the afflictive emotions become liberated into primordial wisdom. This is the liberation offering, which is also often represented by flesh, blood, and bones that are being offered. And so then those that are not slain, there are certain spirits that are liberated through the liberation offering, like spirit beings, non-human beings. And then they are brought under control, so they are kind of fixed, sort of nailed to the ground, and then they are bound under oath. So they are given a commitment that they can continue to engage in their, harsh activities, but it should be directed into the right kind of harshness, which is, so if you like to be harsh and kind of wild, so then you can do that with those enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete. So you will be the ones who will liberate those enemies. So then they are kind of entrusted with that commitment. And actually, no, that might sound harsh. You are the ones, you should get rid of those enemies within whom the 10 grounds are complete. But actually, it is also for their greatest benefit, because those enemies of the 10 grounds, if their activities are not interrupted, then they will continue to engage in negative action. But if they are liberated, then in this very lifetime, an end is brought to their negative karma, and habitual imprints. They all become purified. Their mind becomes completely pure, and then within a pure state of mind, bodhicitta arises in their mind. And so that's actually how the wrathful deities perform the liberation offering. So that is the slaying of those enemies. And then that is connected to the union offering, where those enemies then dissolve in the secret space of the yum, of the mother. And what dissolves there is our afflictive emotions, so their afflictive emotions and their habitual imprints. And then through the union of the wrathful deities, therefore, their minds in the womb of the mother becomes sealed or, infused with the non-dual wisdom of the deities. And in this way, they are liberated within the space of non-duality. And so that is really what is meant when these offerings are being made of flesh, blood, and bones. So here, the flesh is related to ignorance, and the bones to hatred, and the blood is related to desire or attachment. And also, that is what we eat in a wrathful Gana Chakra feast offering. So at that time, actually, we should think that these offering substances, have the nature of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, and they are eaten. The deity eats them in the form of flesh, blood, and bones, but really representing the afflictive emotions. And by the deities eating them, the negative karmas of these sentient beings will become purified. So what really happens is that the wisdom beings eat the afflictive emotions. That's what happens in such an offering. And then we need to understand how this eating takes place, what actually eats. And what really eats is actually the power of one's own awareness, one's own primordial awareness. So you see it for yourself and you meditate. And then an afflictive emotion arises. And then instantly, there's an awareness that recognizes it, that sees, there is anger, I'm getting angry. This is the clear awareness that sees, and that this clear awareness itself is primordial wisdom, and that itself is the heart, the life force of all the wisdom deities, and that itself is the Buddha. So that needs to be understood. And so then the afflictive emotions have no room to stay. As we said, two thoughts cannot coexist simultaneously. Thigden Sumgön also had said that it is impossible for two thoughts to exist simultaneously within the mind, to be present simultaneously. So when clear awareness takes over control, then there cannot be any afflictive emotions. They cannot coexist. And so this is how then you have liberated the afflictive emotions. And this is how awareness has eaten the afflictive emotion. And having eliminated afflictive emotions in this way for the future, this has brought an end to all accumulations of negative karma and habitual imprints. And so this is related to those Dharma protectors, the Dharma palas, who have been bound to under oath to protect the teachings. And so then they liberate those enemies, and then they are made a feast offering. And then when oneself partakes of it, then actually even these beings who are being liberated attain great merit, since they have become liberated. So in this way, the offering of the afflictive emotions is being made. And so then after having liberated them, then that completes the Gana Chakra feast offering here. And so the five aggregates which in the form of flesh, blood, and bones are being consecrated during this offering, like during a Gana Chakra, for example. And then one thinks that this is how they appear, But in nature, they are the 5 afflictions, and by then eating them, they are transformed into the 5 kinds of wisdom. So that's the liberation offering. And also it is called here, it is the secret offering. And the secret offering is extremely profound. There are really many very profound points to it. And actually, all offerings really are included within this secret offering. So in brief, the afflictive emotions are liberated by primordial wisdom. And so then you may wonder, so then since that has just happened, since we have liberated them, then why there are so many afflictive emotions still? So it's not like that. Actually, there's not so many afflictive emotions. It only all arises out of the root of ignorance. There's nothing that doesn't come from ignorance. The 84,000 different afflictive emotions all arise from ignorance. And when one realizes the mind, then they all dissolve within this vast expanse of primordial wisdom, wherein all the Buddhas are one. So when you practice meditation, when you practice Mahamudra, for instance, that state itself is the transformation of the afflictions into primordial wisdom. Or that state itself, for example, is primordial, the non-dual primordial awareness. In the Kagyu lineage, it is also said, when you recognize the nature, the true nature of the afflictive emotions, then all suffering is an ocean of nectar. Then you will be able to transform all suffering into happiness. You realize the great bliss that is free of all suffering. And you realize the mind that transcends birth and death. And as we have said yesterday, it is beyond arising, abiding, and cessation. So this is the liberation and the union offering. And so then on page 10, lastly, there is the offering of Amrita, Rakta, and Dharma. And so also these, here we think that these have the nature of having transformed the 3 poisons, having offered flesh, blood, and bones as representing the 3 poisons, then the 3 poisons are transformed. So all of these offerings here, the liberation offering and the union offering, are called unsurpassed offerings. And these really are the essence of all offerings. So when you understand them, then later when you practice any other secret mantra sadhana, you will understand immediately this is what it means. So this understanding will then just instantly arise within you, just like the sun rising.
그땅 샤가 되라데 마타바나 라시 테라소가 시히로도 찬다마다야 샤가 되라 가리디 뉴몽가 내기요레 마다바가 뉴몽가사 소지소로 상거리 이 풍보가 시행되더니 적대 풍보, 초로 풍보, 주시지 풍보, 주시지 풍보, 나시 풍보가 되라 마다는 뉴몽가 다들 샤가지는 뉴몽가 네 요래 이렇게 속차를 숨겼을 상황을 죄들 양심지 속차나 소소치 뉴모바 치총라제 때라서 치발로 살이 그랬더니 민주 잡제이나 도자제는 민주 잡제더라 그래서 수보라다 제만 무슨 좀들이 되는지 민주들 잡제이나 도자제는 약간 민주는 더지요 살이 때문에 설득되는 깨달은데 향아들 유몽방아 내거리 향아가도 대사다 무슨 속들들이 내기요래 속이 풍부를 내거리 속이 풍부 서울 풍부라더니 아잘리기요래 속이 풍부라더니 주행시에서 속이 풍부를 남반탐지 서울 풍부를 신종디 드시지 풍부를 빼막하죠 와서 드시지 풍부를 도지자고 나바치고 공부를 도지선 봐서 이제 하가 대표주를 만 가까이 되는데 자와는 말이 자와는 말이 뭐 the meaning my meaning monga the thing I see my detailing nangni they get good or territory support nang territory doesn't also then nang same for the tree they talk us what this is the tongue tata the cotton she or tata so then get the shake or they come come at it don't want you can don't want young can I come to don't want you 근데 대탐지 또 많이는 또나 다 이 시간은 저로 마도를 들다 거다다 코와가 좀 내가 잡으다 봐자는 타토가 되지 내가 말이 코와 좀 봤다 봐서 타토가 되지 상지게 막sab사 요 말이 돼 대식이 뭐요 그랬더니 코와 동네 쪽에는 눈이 코와 매듯이 시해요다 눈이 코와 봐도 내가 좀 봤다 봐더니 차름도 맞아 잡도 쳐버렸다 차름도 가지 차로든 맞아 쇼로 그래 대도 송고래 들들에 샹아데 르가 양마 더등아데 르가 영마 르가 야병을 암지 네네 들지 미마메데 미네들이 다다다 들려줘요래 들답이들이 rakta들이 저당 rakta 제시들 저니 진심 저니 진심 제지요래 여기 갖다 준 것도 없지. 기본적인 지겠지. 마시바 탐제는 때 가서잖아. 그것도 세는 거 보나도 되게 것도 rakta 저기 진심이요. 왠지 rakta는 도차리 별라. rakta 처들은 도차. 코를 써와서든 코를 잡고 싸워지 스스 싸워도 차리. 시되는 도차들 이 강나는 틈들이 따뜻하면 맥주로 틈 맥주로 차다서 소화 부모하고 차리지. 될 차 손에 될 시인이 될 대다 봤더니 냉이니 내가 될 샘탐손에 될 되거든요. 오래 대라티네들이 디디 싫어하고 하고서는 속 통에 될 누구 동안 설마 방송 갔당 된 통에 될 야고도 하고서는 다같이 영단하고 따뜻 차고 하고 나이 시기에는 너무 이실이 저도 이 차과형 매봐 남아형 매봐 됐다 했잖아. 돌 맞았더니 빨리. 이 맞더니 이거 뭐 맞더니 들이 다 코와도 차래. 됐다 왔더니 미라도 선데 도나 쳐보 요리. 제저라다 됐더니 대탐지 천들들이 미라 도좀 줘봐서 천들들이 몽통 같아 독습는다고 요리. 독습들 가야 되는 따스다. 차셔서 또 목숨. 또 목숨이 대양되는 노차다 시당이야. 이 먹으려고 먹고도 이제 엄아홍지네 타톡도 말하면 이스라시 시바망하고 엄아홍지디 되니 참말 안 지겠다 봐들 안 지겠다 요바마이 메바마이 돈다고 되었다고 나왔네요네 들이 데라들이 니 셈좀 대가요네 야바지 대다고 차서는 들이 다다 셉지 자기의 타용을 이 상하라면 나가 줘봐들 좀더 하자 자체 보여요 내들 뭐 지는 것도 다 하도 다 삼도스게 이제 공부도 돈다 삼아디 하는 다양 요래디 조반 나한테 나한테 제가 저저저다 제가 요래디 제가 말하면 저저긴 줘봐대 다들 손지 이제 셉다 타다고나 다디 마지 제시 탐지 펑캄 제시기 시바 빼망고 요래 대로라 저거래 대는 요래 그렇지만 내가 같이 안 했더니 당 기본나 뭐이 드리트다 좋아하나 살리는 거네들이 네 어제 가베 로마보다 고 네 원제 돈을 네 얌이 때는 네 보는 거지 됐다 요래 저 초를 막 강시시시 차발에 내려야지
So here it says, so first I offer you Amrita nectar produced from the 8 roots and 1,000 ingredients. So also, and this offering here is related to the 5 types of flesh and nectar or liquids. And now these are pure substances which are related to our impure bodies, or the 5 kinds of flesh related to an impure state, related to the 5 aggregates, and they dwell in essence within the body, within our flesh. And they are also related to the 5 afflictive emotions in the impure state. So those 5 aggregates are the aggregate of form, of feeling, of perception, karmic formation, and of consciousness. And these 5, when in an impure state, then lead to the arising of the 5 afflictive emotions. So the offering of the 5 kinds of flesh is related to that, to the 5 afflictions that are related particularly to the aggregate of form. And so actually, all beings really have that kind of form, also an animal, any kind of life form, but then it exists maybe slightly differently in different beings, also depending on the level of their degrees, and hence we have different appearances of body. But in any case, these various substances that are mentioned here, the 8 roots and 1,000 ingredients of Amrita, are complete within those kinds of flesh. And they are actually complete within the body aggregate of beings to greater or lesser extents. So in this sense, the body is also actually pure if recognized. So there are those 8 root ingredients and 1,000 subsidiary ingredients. And all medicinal ingredient or substance is complete within these. And it is said that they also are complete within the substance of one's own physical body. So these abide within the body, and so that is the physical aggregate, the aggregate of form. And we have also said that these aggregates are in pure nature the 5 male Buddhas of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas. And for example, the aggregate of feeling is related to pride in an impure state, and when purified, it is the Buddha Ratna Sambhava. And the aggregate of form is related to Vairochana, Buddha Vairochana, and the aggregate of perception to Avalokiteshvara, and karmic formation, just different names here, but it's the same Buddhas. And then karmic formation is the kind of literally the Vajra king, and then consciousness is Vajrasattva. So they're just given different names, but it's the same 5 Dhyani Buddhas that we usually mention. And they all are the same, just like one person having different names, but there's really no difference. Just like Chakra is a deity, but all deities have his great bliss nature. And so, again, in brief, to summarize them, in an impure state, they manifest as these aggregates and the 5 afflictive emotions. And when they become matured, then they become the 5 wisdoms, which then are related to the 5 nectars. So the 5 nectars actually relate to the vital essences, the pure essences within our bodies. And these pure essences actually are related to the mind, the mental arisings, our feelings of happiness and suffering and so on, which we also mentioned yesterday. Also, that is related to the Gana Chakra feast offering that we always speak about. And so within the body consists of the 5 elements, and the true nature of these elements is emptiness, and that nature is the nature of the 5 Yum, the 5 female Buddhas. So when one realizes its empty nature, then one realizes the Buddha, a female Buddha nature of one's elements. And when one realizes the nature of mind, then the 5 afflictions transform into the 5 wisdoms. And if we do not realize the nature of mind, then we continue to wander in samsara temporarily, like blocks of ice. And yet ultimately, these ordinary beings do not inherently exist, but they continue to wander in samsara in an illusion-like state. but ultimately there is nothing which is not pervaded by Buddha, because all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. And now when there's this term, not here but elsewhere, like stirring samsara from its depths, that actually implies the recognition that ultimately samsara does not really exist, and it only appears as a temporary illusion. Like ultimately, ice does not exist. Ice can be melted. Its true nature is actually water. So this is the nature of this offering here. So the 5 kinds of flesh are related to the 5 male Dhyani Buddhas, and the 5 kinds of nectar, the liquids, are related to the 5 female Buddhas. And the only difference lies in having matured the mind or not. So then there is also this rakta offering, and so that yesterday also we mentioned it, but yesterday I didn't remember it, and then I asked Khenpo Tenzin about it and to hear more about the nature of this rakta offering. And so apparently there are 2 causes and 3 conditions that cause that rakta to arise. But in brief, I can summarize it by rakta is related to desire. That's really what it is. And therefore, desire is the very root of samsara. It is that which binds us, ties us up in samsaric existence. So this term existence is actually even etymologically related to the word desire. So it is related. And it all arises out of ignorance. So, for example, desire is what causes us to take birth in samsara, because it is due to desire that our mind kind of merges, dissolves into the object of desire. For example, when you see an object of desire with your eyes, you see some form that you desire. That is, first of all, related to the aggregate of feeling. So a feeling of attachment and clinging arises. And then if one leaves this life with that state of mind, one takes birth in an inferior existence, because the mind has dissolved with the object of attachment, of one's desire. And then one will continuously experience suffering in those miserable states of existence. But then, on the other hand, desire may arise, but if you recognize it with awareness, for example, you see a beautiful form. Yesterday we mentioned, it said in the Samantabhadra prayer, when desire arises, or any of the feelings arise, do not reject them, do not abandon them. So you can have that thought of, this is beautiful, but what you should not develop, pursue, is this need for having it, owning it again and again, needing it to be there. So you can think that something is nice, but you can still remain free from attaching to it. And this is how the afflictive emotion is transformed into primordial wisdom. So this is how the afflictive emotions are transformed without having to abandon those thoughts of attachment and aversion. This is how they are liberated. So that's the only difference, liberating them or not liberating them. This is what determines whether or not one will wander in samsara for a long time. So that is the offering of those 5 kinds of meat and nectar, and also the Amrita, Rakta, and Dharma. And also the Amrita, Rakta, and Dharma are related to the 3 poisons, which are the 3 main afflictions of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And they all arise out of ignorance. So attachment and anger are subsumed within ignorance. They arise out of ignorance. And in its pure form, this is also often represented by the syllables Oma Hong. So this is how it is explained from the unsurpassed secret mantra. And there is much to be explained about that. But the true nature of those three poisons really, or the body, speech, and mind too, are the syllables Oma Hung. And so when one recognizes that, then, so when one rests within the ultimate nature of the mind, within the view, then there, with regard to the clinging attachment and so on, there is no more concept of existence or non-existence. One stays within that state that can neither said to be existing nor non-existing. So from that perspective, then, everything becomes the same. There is no concept of, oh, this is delicious or not delicious, or this is good and bad, and so forth. Everything becomes this great state of equanimity. So that is the real meaning of the unsurpassed offering of the secret mantra, which is really very profound. And so then here at the end of that verse is a Sanskrit mantra. So this mantra basically represents the entire offering that we have just read in Tibetan or English. So that's all in that mantra. The mantra says that again just in Sanskrit. So it summarizes it. There are all these offerings, so with Argham, Badam, and so on. It begins with the 7 outer offerings, and then also the 5 sense pleasures, and then there is the liberation offering and the union offering, and Amrita, Rakta, and Dharma, and so forth. So all of the offerings made according to the unsurpassed secret mantra are included within that, within these Sanskrit syllables. And so in any case, if you would like to know more about that, know about the nature of the aggregates and sense sources and the elements and so on, there are a lot of commentaries. You can read some books about that too, and also there is an opportunity to ask the lamas here questions. So if it's about the scriptures, for example, we have the 2 campos here that you can ask. And if it's about ritual practice, sadhana practice, the Tse Lama is here, who has also done this for many years. And if your question is about meditation practice, then Drupal Rinpoche can answer these questions. But now I have done my part to explain that to the best of my abilities.
Amrita da se nang sang chu ba song se chu ba de rang sha la go de rang kan du yong wen long chu ba gan mi sha da nang dang ma zha ba ni de me la sha nang xi ba ka wo sha ti de de ju ku ji cha ro choi ring go yo ma ni hong ju de rang ji ge mo bun zo da da de yo le pa pa na sung go yo le do ji 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 sa wa hong go de sun ni la mi sa chu chu 또 홍고들이 인한건데 또 배워 차들이 이제 살 제발요 말이 밤에 배서 나오냐 봤는데 점점점잖아 근데 차당 똑바 차고 박자요 이제 신인 거리디 노차신배 노차 노노노아 설마 방도 차신 봤으면 이 밤에 배가서 신발 되는 거지 같이 땅한테 밀리면 돼 그냥 아이는 차별도 그요 말 배가라는 때로 어떻게 차설 때 노차신 봤지 차기 봐들이 내 말이 배송을 거리 세주바다 랑기 라르고는 라르로 봐들라 사나 돈이 강리소 성쟁방고 살로이 통나 지시 잡라 동 주제 매부 동로이 송 돈이 강리 딱게 맞도네 사시 라디 차당도 아파데 야바니 돈을 근데서 담에 이어 말이지 이들이 나온 거니 바사나들이 심보를 차 똑바로 당 대라고 지는 그러다가 조금 조리스트 비리스 사요리 대다를 지르더니 따뜻한 유몽 부봉아티 자르가는 매 매인 거를 미네들이 마음에 유몽동아리 이제 또다 제베들이 도용하다로나 착과다지 뭐들이 고란 창들이 호환 참여를 호환 참 세트 짓을 내놓은 거 짓을 나오래 그래서 다티 조르디나 그래서 다티 조서는 올라 조비라 조 대답을 감성 뒤초 때로 차는 거 때때 용지 뭐 때에 따라서 민들이 머리지랑 무접 저서 온가 때로 가성도 초제 들어가 차고도 무접들이 들라고 있을 때도 다들이 달롱 자통도 되게 좀 내더니 다다다리 포부도 좀 남에서 저한테 때로 차면 포부들이 다다 뉴모 말이 뉴모한테 정확한 맞춘데 뉴모 조자를 살서 라면서 저한테 포부들이 좀 내더니 라이스는 람스더니 막을 그렇다고 람스더니 라미게 돌리 라면고 갖다서 디스는 천만에 받을 라미게 차대요래 졸라다지 라미게 줘봐 차대요래 네 따다다 대로 차대요래 민한테도 차응을 무조건이 어따라 무슨 정거리 자송답을 받아오니
So we have made the outer, inner, and the secret offerings. And so then at all times we should see ourselves as the deity. And when you enjoy any of the 5 sense pleasures, then do not separate from the appearance of the deity. So, but then what is the appearance of the deity? It does not really necessarily mean that you have to visualize at all times, the deity's color and the form, the implements and the ornaments and so on. That's not what is meant. But just remember the Hong. And when you remember the Hong, then just naturally all grasping and fixation to the concrete existence of things will become purified. In the Vajrakhilaya practice also, that is what is mentioned, that so there's this prayer at the end, may beings become free from the grasping at duality, and then may bodhicitta arise in their mind. Basically, in meaning, that's what it says. And so then if we forget about it, however, then we become unmindful. And if we become unmindful, then again, all kinds of thoughts arise and they remain unrecognized. And then we think that this is tasty, this is not. And the various coarse and subtle thoughts of attachment and aversion arise all the time. But as long as there is awareness, as it is said, when desire arises, do not reject it, but also do not accept it. You just rest at ease in the natural state. So it all becomes the same. So also Milarepa had said that when it comes to, for example, attachment arising, so he explained basically there are different ways of eating and drinking, or in general partaking of sense pleasures, of desirables. So he said that when I rest within a state of meditating on myself, visualizing myself as the deity, then this is how offerings are made. When I'm eating from within a state of emptiness. And then this is the way to eat without having to abandon anything or reject anything. This is how you eat from within a state of mindful awareness. And when I drink, I drink from within a state of a non-dual view. And this is how everything that I drink becomes a state of great equanimity. So non-dual, because there is no thought then of this is clean or this is dirty or good and bad or delicious and not delicious and so on. All of these are purified in the natural state without having to abandon them, without having to reject them. So this is how it is with these offerings. And so the 5 aggregates, to summarize, are related to the 5 afflictive emotions, which are related to the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, the male Buddhas. And in the impure or immature state, they are the 5 afflictions. And if one does not recognize them, as one follows the feelings arising due to the aggregate of form, and then one enjoys and indulges in the various sense pleasures with clinging attachment, then this attachment is what will cause one to wander in samsara. That's when the mind then follows the karmic winds. So liberation means to have a state of mind where you feel that if it's here, it's fine. If it's not here, it's fine. You are content. There's a contentment where you are content or satisfied with whatever comes your way, whatever arises. And such contentment is a really great quality. So here, when we asked the deities to accept the offering and then bestow the siddhis or accomplishment, we should think that, may I become like that, the siddhi of contentment, being content with whatever comes my way, without preference. And actually, that also is what defeats the 4 maras and what therefore causes you to accomplish the rainbow-like form of the Sambhogakaya. So it is also said that having defeated the demon of the aggregates made the body become liberated into the form of the deity and the appearance of the deity, then just at once bring to mind wrathful Guru Rinpoche and think that this is the natural, his nature is the natural state of your mind and the Guru's mind, and then just remain in a state of non-distraction, and that actually naturally in itself is the actual deity. And if you sustain such awareness, then naturally in all activities, whatever you do also becomes, or partake of, becomes an offering to the deity. So this is how it becomes when the mind has matured, has ripened. That's the siddhi, or the accomplishment to attain. So the siddhi really is to ultimately accomplish the actual deity, that is, to attain the rainbow-like Sambhogakaya in the bardo.
Te kangi dili yumo nga te ne yun yumo nga te tini ko song tok yung tin chini nga la ne yung yore. Te ne yung chi tuwa te ta te hui tuwa te 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 ta tok te to mimpa kapsa ta kari chiga lu te kari se de. De ko nambar nam te song na wang ta ye tok me tuwa yung tini chin yung tin chini to yung chupa te jawarin kan te nang yumo wa te tini temok Shedang, Timok, Docha, Shedang, Najar, Chado, Ding are the good song, To, Yoti, Chile, not a million glory. The million of the destiny, Sunamji, the Zawa getting child of the song, the Kakapi, Dudon to which, Betis of 3, True Son in the thought of the immediately, sorry, Maquita dinner. Don't made in the Java Chibari. Yeah, see the Zabel people that they are adopted me, they thought, see it in here. Chujiti, oh, Chuja Jagan Saji Yomarte, Marie. Kangla Kang the tell us they think about the roar, those sauces strong jelly, they should be already. Benesan 18 star county. Just so American Miss Samaki. Oh, George Washington, didn't just something, then talk about it. Lapatang the Yogo Samaki. Wrong with Jacam and the rotation. Oh, meet it, they will suggest what I read. Oh, they don't. Oh, Ting all the jambang to the town. They took Donga, that chim, dealers over Dongaton, the Yaran Chilang, Chinatake, John, Rani Messat, or go to it. Oh, that did do it a party. It's a chatty. 대다고 민들이 취지니 되니 다다 소속의 주력 소속의 나들이 소속이 밤에 피바다 되어 적은지 멋지 룽아 예선들이 룽아 예선 그다 용띠들 때 용띠 취지들이 가래들이 용띠 시합요 봐 틀레들이 사와 줘봐 되겠다 영은 모델이 sep지 터질 피바다 되어 적다 용띠 체행가 되는 납창가 다니지 난 유몽가지 시간을 민용나 들이 대들 다 틀레도 들이 다 라이 다당 따주고는 또 봐지 이 용띠 sabjeta 세 그지 차록대라서 받아들 들이 다당서 소 딱두 요래 다다다 상하 다다 동선들 세달 오 라타면 걸 자와는 거 르가도 세고 나니 시간 나니 뭔가 되 시간은 매인소 따래지 오 노제 조성도 가래 오 돈이 이게 성도 좋아 센터 돈이 이게 카마드라바지 오 대사를 다용디 다다토지 다들이 다도바들 토요래 들이 잡라면 동서 다왔당 말은 좀 녀면데 내서들 들이 세 이마다 다게 시래도 다 지키우나 들이 세직디 사크요래 난 가래리 상하가 라탐적에 들인 코와를 신차베 야 들인 말과 인지가 말만 봐서 때때 탐제 따르들이 오 이마다 나가지 내도 가래리지 어때 낭 생부들이 다다 자고 한말 나디 책다 어리들이 다다도디도 너희들이 라디 용디 고통 톡은 선 라디 고통 톡선 민용디 용디 됐다고 요래지 다 처리다 좋아를 상황서 들이 다다 탐치들이 민족과 강은 벨라다다 벨차잖아 니송요래 엄마 제마 바로다키 네 로마만 보여래 로마 탐치더니 똑시디 동까지 가sab지 말아리 바라 나또 도사래지 왕거 가리가리 송부터 쭉 가리래 야 쭉까지 쏜다고 따뜻한 때는 책 무보세 요래 로마 대도 라친세 독토과 망보를 대탐제는 말아리에 뉴르라 사제 때문에 속성이 오송 왕구디 랍차가래 대디 말발로다 파기가 책제도 랍나 말아리에 가래 사제 때문에 속성제도 롱기 때봐 자치보 요리 땡사보 요리 또 때마다 가래 가지고 봐 되는 답을 이렇게 대사가석 타고 전에 낙선을 들고 와자 다시면 자 마당 내라서 강리에 다시 같이 도 대타면 말아리 뭐 지그 냐도 용띠디 대라 때 빠져 그 바지 제대로 들이다 책 때에는 비족살이 대도 디지시 마고 패고 사지 마고 패고는 딱 소랑 그 주요 받고서 가지고 받지 마발로때 책대 저거서 말라르베 토르요 이 말라르베 다다 로마 콜로마 다냐면 괜히 가세도 딱서 가지고 방나 야 레디 처리지는 되는 로마 가세도 레바레바 되는 가세도 대탑제 되나 모두 가세도 다들 가세도 내가 사제 때문에 사와제도 되잖아 오 용당들 처리지 다 처리되다 그래 변에 말아봐 바를 잡고가다는 욕되들이 밥이 잡고 땅 그냥 패쇼 저랑 칼라테 돌로테지 내 밥이 잡고 욕보게 손을 말아봐 콜로비 말아봐 콜 칼라비는 콜 칼라 요래 콜 잡아버리고 잡고 콜이지 콜 자식 사람도 이렇게 그러는 다 주방고 그렇게 내가 초칼라면서 잠살은 돌아야래지 보자서가 돼서 내피지래 오나 다다 대디 뭐 잡아 되게 한국만 gestam다 요 말이 말아봐 들 참아 치망시가디 동고 남도 하고리 삼지고 말아봐 들 고상상 차고요 대다वर 게니를 말아봐 자식이 대다वर 마고 말이 소사고 말이 고소고 말이 더신고 말이 취지 자식이 대리인데 다 받을 거리 내도 그래서 봐도 대다고 하고는 이 추지 용띠는 차례지 대다고 살로다는 이 담배 추 상모들이 이 폭설이 다 사지셔 잡다 말이지 말하는 사지 삭자도 그런 거 샘는 용도 늘지 책단 늘서 빼서리 샘 늘서 빼다 당소 가지고 말하래 말이지 저 다음에 말이지 말하래 붙고 말이 대다고 살로다는 이 용띠는 차례지 대다고 차죠 그래지 어때 아토도 전에 역사에 둘러서 미소자 저주고 저소 아칼 방송 잠깐 되지 아토도 전에
Shall I do it later on something or should he?
미소자 되니
Mr. Rinpoche is asking me if I should translate it now because it's time, it's kind of long. Now or not now? Not now, later, okay. So then I will translate this later. Deni jene nga gyogin. Deni nga jene gyogin. Jela.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, somewhat.
알바 사가 생주.
So I will translate this part a little bit later.
띠부치, 야.
So because this part was a little bit long and it's already time to take a break, so I will translate that when we come back in 30 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. We will take a tea break now for 30 minutes. And we will be back here, hopefully, at noon, MST, Arizona time, GMT -7. Thank you. We'll see you back in a little while.